How did Catalonia's most wanted man get away? With a warrant out for his arrest, former Catalan leader in exile, Carles Puigdemont, snuck into Spain last week, delivering a speech to supporters before disappearing again. Does the debacle embarrass Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez or highlight a floundering campaign for Catalan independence? I'm Andrea Sankey, and this is the Newsmakers. There were some bizarre scenes in Catalonia last week when wanted fugitive and ex-Catalan president Carles Puigdemont addressed a crowd in central Barcelona, rallying thousands around his unceasing call for Catalonian independence. Police failed to arrest him before he escaped back to Belgium. At first, it looked like a win for the separatist leader, who stole the show just as the region's new socialist president was elected. Here's a look now at what happened and how it's affected Spain.
It was a dramatic return to Spain after 7 years. Despite an arrest warrant over the 2017 independence bid, the Catalan separatist leader Carles Puigdemont appeared in Barcelona to address thousands of independence supporters.
Whatever happens when we meet again, may we be able to chant again together, loudly, the chant that I've given in my speech. Long live Free Catalonia.
Puigdemont had previously expressed his intention to make a comeback on the day the Catalan parliament voted for a new president. So the police were expecting him to go to the regional parliament. But after his speech, Puigdemont jumped into a car and disappeared into the streets of Barcelona. Police officers at the rally made no attempt to arrest him, saying it might have caused public disorder. The Catalan police, Mossos, then launched a massive search operation, setting up checkpoints across the city. But later, 2 of their officers were arrested for helping Puigdemont escape.
This is a reprehensible and unacceptable act, which is an affront to the whole Mossos. They do not deserve to wear our uniform. They not only made the arrest of Mr. Puigdemont difficult, but also their intervention put the rest of the police in a difficult position.
A day later, Puigdemont revealed he had returned to Belgium, where he had fled to just days after the independence referendum in 2017. That referendum had been deemed illegal by the central government in Madrid. When it was held, it quickly turned violent as police tried to prevent people from voting. The turnout was only 43%, but of those voters, 90% were in favour of secession. Puigdemont signed a unilateral declaration of independence, prompting the central government to revoke Catalonia's autonomy, impose direct rule, and dissolve the regional parliament. Spain also charged the movement's leaders with rebellion and sedition. A further charge of embezzlement was filed for using public money to hold the referendum. Some were jailed, while others fled the country.
We are facing a state that puts force above reason and has decided to use violence and repression to force us to abandon our political project, and they will not achieve that.
Last year, Puigdemont negotiated an amnesty deal with Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez that would allow him to return to Spain. In exchange, Sánchez got the support of Puigdemont's Junts party to become Prime Minister. But the Supreme Court ruled that the amnesty does not apply to Puigdemont's embezzlement conviction, so he remained in exile. In a further blow to the separatists, Sánchez ally Salvador Ila's non-secessionist Socialist Party won Catalonia's regional election in May. And on the day of Puigdemont's comeback, Illa was elected as the region's president.
I will govern for everyone, taking into account the plurality and diversity of Catalonia. The first step to do so is to respect each other, to have a constructive and positive tone, and to take into account the plurality of our country.
Now, after a short-lived shock, the status quo between Puigdemont and the Madrid government seems to be re-established. But as one still dreams of an independent Catalonia, and the other makes gains to keep Spain united, can the government keep the ball in its court?
So how pivotal was Carles Puigdemont's controversial visit for Catalonia, and where does it leave the region's relationship with Madrid? Well, joining me now to debate that and much more are from Madrid, former member of parliament for the National Conservative Vox Party, Ivan Espinosa de los Monteros. Also from the Spanish capital, Luis Arroyo is the former political advisor to Spain's ex-socialist Prime Minister, José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, and from Cardiff, historian in the Hispanic Studies Department at Cardiff University and author of The Rise of Catalan Independence, Spain's Territorial Crisis, Andrew Dowling. Thanks all so much for being with me. Ivan, let's start from last week and tell us how this escape happened. 300 police forces surrounding the area where Puigdemont spoke, roadblocks were out, yet he got away, and some are speculating that that was actually intentional.
Well, of course it was intentional. The only way somebody can get away in Spain, in Catalonia and Barcelona, is if the government actually decides that he's going to get away, and that was part of the plan all the way. Mr. Puigdemont is living in Belgium. He's escaped Spanish justice. He should be detained. He should be arrested and put in jail while he awaits being judged. But what he did was he came in and he gave a speech in front of 2,500 people. And then he walked out, and he was allowed to do so only because the national government, the government of Mr. Pedro Sánchez, the socialist government, needs the support of his party for two reasons. First of all, to be able to hold a government, to make a government in Catalonia after the recent elections. And secondly, because he has a very weak coalition in the national government, in the national parliament in Madrid. So this is a tit for tat. He needed Mr. Puigdemont's support, his party support. He needs 7 votes in parliament. And he needed his support for his socialist friend to be a president of Catalonia, which he has become now. So yes, he was allowed to come in and he was allowed to leave.
Okay, let me ask Luis, is that true? Is the government in Madrid responsible for aiding and abetting, really, a fugitive?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And Ivan knows even better than me that the police force legally competent to arrest Mr. Puigdemont is the Catalan police. That's what our law says, and the Ministry of Interior, responsible for the Spanish police as a whole, offered help, and the regional police rejected it. For me, it is evident, and I agree with Ivan in this, that the regional police wanted to avoid the spectacle that you can imagine that could be organized. It would have been a political disaster for Spain and for its institutions to arrest Mr. Puigdemont at that moment for 3 basic reasons. First, the appointment of the new socialist president would have been delayed, and that's by itself a scandal. Second thing, the creation of, so to speak, a victim of the oppression of the Spanish government, of the Spanish state, the Spanish government, but which is obviously a fake. No one really believes that the Spanish state is oppressing the independentists in Catalonia. But that image would have been a disaster, would have been a disaster for Spain as a nation and as a state. So no one really wanted Puigdemont arrested.
Okay,
so
Luis. I mean, yeah, okay. People can agree it would have looked bad. It could have caused a lot of discomfort, to say the least, but it is the law. They were supposed to arrest him.
Yeah. No, well, actually, let me make something clear. First, you can establish which is the law. Not only, I mean, a judge can say Mr. Puigdemont should be arrested, but the level of pressure that the police can eject in a certain moment can be decided by the police bodies. Again, it is the Catalonian police, the one in charge of arresting Mr. Puigdemont, not the Spanish police. That's the first idea. Second idea, knowing that there's an order for Mr. Puigdemont to be arrested, the level of pressure that can be ejected it's something that has to be decided in the moment. For political reasons, and we are talking here about political reasons, obviously, for political reasons, it would be a disaster, an absolute disaster
this is
arrest
very
Mr. Puigdemont in that moment.
Let me let Ivan respond very quickly, and then I'll get to Andrew. Ivan, go ahead.
This is very interesting because what Luis is saying is essentially what the left in Spain says. You're saying, Andrea, he should have been arrested because there is a warrant on him. and he needs to be put in front of a judge. And that's the law. This is what she said. And Luis says, yes, but. Yes, but what? Yes, but politically it wouldn't be understood. Listen, politics is not involved in the administration of justice. Justice is the application of the law by independent judges. The problem in Spain is that with this government, and in general with socialists, they tend to try to interfere with law, right? And if they don't like the laws, they can change the laws. Not only do they change the laws, they change the entire judicial system.
There's a law, Ivan,
judicial system.
There's a law, there's an amnesty law, there's an amnesty law in Spain that we will probably talk about it afterwards, but there's a law in Spain that was approved by your parliament, not by you because you're not a member of the parliament anymore, but by your parliament, my parliament, that says that there's an amnesty for the independent leaders, and you know that.
You're not wrong about this. You've changed everything.
We have a big challenge here in Spain because there's one judge in the Supreme Court, one judge that has ordered Mr. Puigdemont to be arrested. One judge
usually it's one judge. It's
okay.
always one judge.
I'll tell you what, we'll talk about that a little bit further if we can, a little bit later on in this debate. Because yes, that judge did say that Carles Puigdemont is still guilty of this embezzlement because he used, and arguably so, EU funds in particular to pay for the referendum that was held without national approval.
The illegal referendum.
Okay, let me ask Andrew though. I mean, you've heard the exchange there. First of all, I'm wondering if you think in this whole, and I'll call it a debacle, is there a winner here? Who came out looking like, you know, they got one over the other side?
Nobody. And in a way, thinking about this from the UK, one of the things that occurs to me is that August in Britain is traditionally known as the silly season, wherein sort of leading media figures, journalists, politicians, etc., all go off on holiday. And the news media is kind of like focused on stories that aren't really that dramatic, that really important, hence the name silly season. And I think the kind of the incursion of Carles Puigdemont and then his kind of like rapid departure, I would actually say, you know, it's a pretty minor scale within the broader theme of everything that's happened in Spain since 2017. It's very much a kind of like an end to the process of independence for Catalonia. It brings to a kind of closure everything that's happened since 2017. And it brings to a closure, really, in my view, things in a very undramatic way. Carles Puigdemont was kind of trapped into returning because he'd made so many promises that he was going to return to Spain or return to Catalonia. He was kind of left really with no alternative. He didn't quite follow through and go to the parliament, but he's also absolutely does not want to face the Spanish judiciary. He does not face the Spanish judicial system, and he doesn't absolutely want to go to prison. So he made a kind of like a calculation with his close advisors that he would do a rapid trip into Catalonia and rapidly depart. And I think in a few weeks, we won't really be talking very much about this. I think it's a minor incident in a broader process that's happened over a number of years.
Yeah, okay. I mean, you mentioned an end to the process of independence. Hold on, let me just ask Andrew quickly. Do you think this is the end? I mean, obviously, the pro-independence parties lost their majority for the first time in decades. Is that a temporary blip, do you think, or is this really an indication of, like you said, an end to the process?
I think if you zoom out and compare these if you want pro-independence movements, they go through cycles of kind of like, you know, being up and down and very high profile and going through a period of low profile. We're seeing a similar issue in Scotland, where independence in Scotland is currently, you know, it hasn't yet touched bottom. So I think we'll almost certainly see Catalan independence as a kind of like really as a minor player in Spanish politics for the foreseeable future. But it is always possible that it could resurface. It's always possible that it could return in a very strong manner. And whether it does or not ultimately will be determined by political decisions made in Madrid. We have a very different government that's been in power in Spain since 2018. And if you want to compare things, in November 2011, a conservative government came to power and support for independence was about 18-20%. When that conservative government left power in the summer of 2018, support for Catalan independence had risen dramatically to 45-50%. Now it's fallen again under a socialist government. And essentially, as I say, what might happen with independence, whether it continues to be a kind of like a minor issue in Spanish politics, will ultimately be determined by how Madrid responds. And I think, the socialist government have played a better hand overall than their predecessors in office.
A better hand. That's an interesting way to put it. Okay, go ahead.
Let me address part of what Andrew just said, because this is interesting as well. Now, I've been hearing this about the separatist movement being, it's boiling down, it's coming down. This is the end of it. I've been hearing this since 1978. Okay, when the Constitution was approved, 1978, this was the end of the separatist movement because they gained what they wanted, which was autonomy. Now, this is 1978. In 1981. They wanted a little more. So they wanted the education system to be managed by them. So they gave them the education system. In 1996, with a different government, they reached a coalition, they reached an agreement for President Aznar to become president, and they wanted a little more. They wanted the police to be out in Catalonia. They wanted more financing. They wanted just a little more, and then it would be end. Then that would be the end of the whole thing. Then in 2003, President Zapatero said that anything that came out of the Catalan parliament regarding the Estatut, which is sort of like the small constitution for the region, would be approved in Madrid because this was going to be the end of it. And then there was the entire corruption scheme in Catalonia. And then came the 2017 illegal attempt of a coup d'etat, because this is really what it was. And they declared independence like 5 seconds. It was ridiculous. The whole thing was just very silly. But this was going to be the end of it. And we never hear the end of it because the main reason of existence for Separatist Party is to complain and to ask for more all the time. So no, unfortunately, this is never going to end. And the problem is there's a limit to how much more can be given out to independent or separatist politicians.
Ivan, there's
all the time.
No, there's no way that you can contradict what Andrew says, because it's data from sociological studies all over the place. The pressure of the so-called, what we call here in Spain, the process, it's obviously coming down. Of course, we are not going to make this appear. Sorry, Ivan. Sorry, just a second. We are not going to make 25-30% at the least of the population in Catalonia that wants the independence since decades. And that's something that we are not going to suppress unless you want to, to extradite all the the pro-independency Catalonians. But it is clear for anybody. It is clear for anybody, Ivan, that this more moderate, pragmatic position of the left in Spain is making very good results. We all know you have a bull behind you, and everybody in the audience is watching as it. And it's, for me, a symbol of the way that the extreme right sees politics, not only in Spain, all over the world.
Really?
Just a matter of stamina, a matter of stamina, a matter of Spain, una grande y libre, we used to say, as you know.
It's funny because
rate and free, and it doesn't work that way, Ivan. It doesn't work that way. We have a socialist, moderate, constitutionalist president right now in Catalonia.
I'd like to kind of focus in a little more on Carles Puigdemont and the separatist movement as per this episode of our program. So let me come back to Andrew, because the question that Luis had raised, really, by saying that there were actually more important kind of political objectives to not arresting Puigdemont when perhaps they had an opportunity to. If they had arrested him and put him in jail, would he have become a martyr? Would it have further raised the profile of independence in Catalonia and across Spain, rather than kind of letting the separatist movement maybe fade away and even potentially die with Puigdemont as long as he's not in Spain?
To some extent, but I think Puigdemont has today diminished capacity to influence things compared to several years ago. I think if he returned to Catalonia, for example, in the autumn of 2019, when there are dramatic scenes on the streets of Barcelona after the sentences were announced by the Spanish Supreme Court. I think if he'd returned then, he could have had a dramatic political impact. I think it's significant that Carles Puigdemont returned last week and only 4,500 people came out to receive him. That's a pretty small number. That's not a kind of mass of Catalans thinking that he is the chosen one, he is the Messiah, he is their dear leader. He basically appeals now to a narrow cohort of what we can call hardcore independentists. Maybe they're a fifth of the population Catalonia at best, probably less. But he has, as an appeal, he has strong appeal amongst that cohort, but he does not have broad appeal anymore. He once had that broad appeal, but that has gone. Partly because he's made a number of kind of miscalculations over the years, partly to do with it also the fact that the independence parties themselves have engaged in an internecine squabble for a number of years. They can't agree upon themselves. They've got very different perspectives in terms of kind of like pragmatism and a hardcore approach. So I think even if Carles Puigdemont had been arrested last week, I think it would have made some impact, but probably not as dramatic as people anticipated. Plus, there's the Spanish amnesty law, which once it's finally approved, will ultimately release him from prison anyway. So he would have been, even if he'd been arrested last week, he would have been in prison for a very short period of time.
Interesting. Okay, Yvonne, let me come back to you because, ironically, I think you might actually agree with Puigdemont's own lawyer, because he said to reporters on Puigdemont's return that his return was actually, I'm quoting this, necessary in order to demonstrate the false appearance of normality that the Spanish government is trying to sell. Do you agree there that there's this false appearance of normality in the region that the Spanish government wants to convince people of?
Well, let me start by saying that Puigdemont's lawyer is a former convicted terrorist, okay, kidnapper. So I'm not going to agree on him on anything in general. But I would say that it's true that the Spanish government is trying to sell a normality which does not exist. I would say that, if you listen to Luis and in general the socialists, they'll tell you that, the fact that they would say this is a moderate socialist government doesn't exist. In Spain, there's no such thing as a moderate socialist. There's only,
not for the extreme right, obviously. I mean, for the extreme right, nothing is moderate.
Let me put it this way: who do you think would be the extreme right in Spain? Because to me, the extreme right would be somebody who runs against the law.
Vox is extreme right in Spain. Everybody agrees on that.
Somebody who is a convicted criminal who can come in and out.
No, the extreme right in Spain is represented mainly by Vox.
It turns out that the extreme
There's no doubt.
Right in Spain
no one doubts that.
Is the separatist,
not even you.
Separatist, quasi-fascist group of Puigdemont. This is the extreme right in Spain. And by the way, because the world is circular, they tend to be supported by the extreme left, whether it's of ERC, the other independent movement in Catalonia, or the extreme left coalition in power, which is headed by Pedro Sánchez, who, I like.
Pedro Sánchez is the extreme left, right?
I like it that Luis says that he's
everybody
moderate,
agrees.
But there's
I'm
no
sure that everybody agrees with you.
This is the most extremist government we've had since Franco. There's no question about it. I mean,
extreme
this
left.
is the most radical, extremist
right.
government we've ever had.
Okay.
I don't think you would discuss it.
Like I said, I don't want to look too much at the national scope of things. So, Luis, I'm just going to come back to you. We only have like 2 minutes left. And if you can, bring us some of the kind of atmosphere, if possible, in Madrid. I mean, was there a sense of shock when this happened? Was it embarrassing for the government?
Well, as you probably know, Spain in the middle of August is like like Madrid is empty. Everybody's in the beach. We have a long holiday tomorrow. Many people is taking also Friday. People is not, believe me, people is not down there speaking of the terrible things that are going to happen because Puigdemont just appeared and like a magician just disappeared. No, there's no. The feeling right now in Spain is that most of the people, of course, especially in Catalonia, is fed up with the so-called process. Everybody is fed up. There are lots of frustration. That process has gone nowhere. And right now in Spain, the sense is that there's a possibility that the independent movement comes down, everything relaxes, and we pass the page already. And I agree absolutely. By the way, Mr. Puigdemont is a broken toy right now. He has no future in Catalonia, not, of course, in in Spanish politics, to my view. We will see. But it was just an anecdote. What happened was, for me, it was just an anecdote.
And Andrew, I can see you agreeing there. 15 seconds
Yeah,
if you want to just
very
wrap up.
much
Go
so.
ahead.
Yeah, well, also, I think, just in the dialogue between Ivan and Luis as well. I mean, I think we have to be very careful how we use political language, and I don't think anybody observing Spanish politics would call the current government in Spain, it's just a moderate centre-left administration. It's not an extreme. It's like saying the current Labour government in the UK is an extreme radical government or something, and it's kind of like out there as kind of like, it's just not plausible as a political argument to say that this is an extreme government. It has no credibility, and no kind of political scientist or no kind of like observer, whether a reader of The Economist would give it any credence.
Andrew, that will have to be the final word. I'd like to thank all three of my panelists so much for being with us, of course, on this edition of the Newsmakers, our viewers for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on X, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.